Hi everyone, Nikki Buckaloo here at the Seniors Real Estate Institute. Thanks for joining me for today's question, which is, how can I become skillful at moderating panels? What a great question. So those of you who are out there doing educational seminars know that one of the most powerful ways to deliver content is by using expert panelists, and you serve as the moderator, helping guide and direct the conversation of the experts that you're hosting. Now, we've all seen expert panels in action. We've either seen them online or we've seen them in person, and my guess is that if you're like me, you've seen really great panels and you've seen not so great panels. But have you ever really taken a step back and asked yourself what made a particular panel or an event particularly exceptional, and what made some of them more of a lackluster performance? So let's talk about 10 of the things that are important for moderators, for people just like you and just like me, to make a panel successful. Because my belief is that a successful panel rises and falls with the success and skill, not success, but skill and preparation of the moderator. So let's talk about the 10. Number one, knowing your objective for the topic. What is it you're trying to accomplish? What message are you trying to convey? And that brings us to the second thing, which is, if you're clear about that, then interviewing and selecting the right panelists to convey that message. Now, when I say the right panelists, sometimes panelists might be really, really knowledgeable, but they're really not great at their delivery. Conversely, you might have somebody who's really great on stage and very personable, but doesn't have a lot of depth of knowledge. So you're really looking for both. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes someone doesn't really seem like they'd be a great panelist, but when they get up there, they really shine. So sometimes you have to interview them and see how they do before you really know if they're going to be effective. So that was the second thing. The third one is what I call pre-event prep or pre-panel preparation. Now, this can either be a one-on-one conversation that you have with your panelists individually, or it can be a group meeting, like a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting, where you all go over the questions together and talk about what it is as a group you want to accomplish through the panel, keeping in mind that you have an objective, right? If you're the organizer, you have an objective for what you're wanting to deliver. Now, there are some advantages and disadvantages to doing it both ways, the individual and the group, which I really don't have time to get into on this video today, but I will say that if you can do it together as a group, it really adds to the actual panel when you have it, because they've met each other, they've had some conversation, and they can bounce things off of one another based on that panel preparation. The fourth one is clear instructions, and that's the responsibility of the moderator. If your panel, let's say, starts at 10 a.m. and your communication to your panelists was that you start at 10 a.m. and they're not there until 2 minutes before, because you didn't communicate to them you'd like them to be there early, or how to get there, or what the process is, then you might have a disaster. Everybody might be stressed out, you might run late, a lot of things can happen. And so clear communication, not just about the actual event itself, but also about your expectations of the panelists. All right, the fifth one is actually the venue and panel itself. So I've kind of talked about leading up to the panel, but really important as a moderator that you set up the panel in a way that works, and that you have the right amount of chairs and the right kind of chairs, and how is it going to be arranged so that the audience has a great experience and the moderator and the panelists also have a great experience. Then your introduction. The moderator should make an introduction to kind of set the stage, if you will, for the audience about what they can expect from the panel. And then during the panel, the key for the moderator is conversation versus interrogation. So it should feel like you're having a conversation with your panel, The panelists should be having a conversation with one another and the audience, and it should have a flow about it. Now, if you've done all of your preparations correctly, this works out really well. If you haven't done any preparation, it can be absolutely arduous and not turn out really well. Okay, number 8 is using humor and anecdotes. As the moderator, it's your job to monitor the energy in the room. If you're talking about a really heavy or deep subject, then you need to bring that energy back up by shifting gears from time to time. If it gets too out of control and it gets a little rowdy, you've got to be able to monitor that as well and bring people back to the conversation. And then last but not quite least, we got one more after this one, fielding audience Q&A. Effective moderators are really good at fielding audience questions and making sure that the panel is able to answer those questions effectively. And what do I mean by that? A lot of this comes from experience, frankly. It just, after doing it over and over again, you kind of get a read on a room. But a lot of times I'll see someone field a question from the audience, and the audience question isn't really appropriate for the topic, and yet they pass it on to their panel, and their panel kind of looks at them like, I don't know what to do with this question. It's really not relevant. Well, it's the moderator's responsibility to determine if that question needs to be rephrased, if it needs to be maybe held and asked later after the event, or if it needs to be just completely ignored. You can't ignore it, but basically saying to that person, you know what, I'm not going to answer that question yet, but talk to me afterward and I'll be happy to address it for you. And then lastly, keeping the time. Speaking of time, it's time for me to finish up this video. If you are the moderator, it's your job to watch the time. And let's say you have 10 questions that you're going to ask the panel, but you want to leave time for audience Q&A at the end. Then you've got to be monitoring the time, and you might have to cut your prepared questions short, or you might have to stop the Q&A on time in order to leave the venue at the time that you told people you would adjourn. So the moderator has a big job, and if you're really good at it, you'll love doing it because it can be a lot of fun. But I will just leave you with this thought. So much of getting good at being a moderator is about experience. So don't be scared of it, just get out there and do it and practice. If you need to practice, practice. But I would just tell you that your job as a moderator, so much of it, as I said here, about 4 or 5 of the steps happen before the event even occurs. So do your preparation, get to know your panelists, and have a lot of fun. Until next time, I'm Nikki Buckaloo at the Seniors Real Estate Institute, and look up one of our workshops that we have on effective moderation as well. We'd love to have you in one of those classes. Make it a great day.